Dun, dun, dun! Hello, beautiful people. It's me, Robyn by Carpenter Briscoe, your favorite spiritual life coach. And I am so grateful to be here with you for another Illimitable Living Session. I love, love, love being here with you. I love bringing you conversations and thoughts about how to live a life without limits. And today we have a guest. I promised you a guest, and my guest is my wonderful and beautiful friend, Brendan Spee. I fucked it up.
That's fine.
I knew I was going to. Csaposs.
Yes.
See? It's because I say it wrong in my head all the time. Anyway, my friend Brendan is this beautiful, wonderful light. We found one another and never let each other go when we did find each other. And now he is halfway around the world from me and doing wonderful and spectacular things. And then, of course, while he's doing spectacular professional things, he also has this wonderful journey of discovery of his spiritual self. And that is why I actually invited him to be here with me today, because I want to talk about what it means to create a spiritual life and how different ways that you can do that. So welcome. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm magnificent and grateful. I am. I'm really grateful. So one of the things that I said to you was that you are fluid with your spirituality in ways that I resonate with. So talk to me some about, your journey.
Yeah. Like I think a lot of us in life, it's definitely been a journey. Of course, I grew up going to church every Sunday. I grew up in the Methodist church. Found, I think, like a love of music early on in elementary school. So I switched from a Methodist church to an Episcopalian church.
Yeah.
Episcopal church has like a long history of music. And it was a journey. Not only because of my spiritual beliefs, but also like my sexual orientation, which was a thing at that time in history in the Episcopal Church. There was a lot of drama happening. So, it's been a journey kind of up and down on the church side. I think I went through a phase in high school and college where I kind of journeyed away from that part of my spiritual practice just because of some negative experiences that I had because of political drama about
Mm.
people in the church. Um, but I found my way back, I think, after college, just because I grew up always appreciating, especially in the Episcopal tradition, there's like a big focus on musical expression, but also like reflection and like moments of quiet grace that I really appreciate, and contemplation. um, so I kind of found my way back to that through music again
Mhm.
after college. So, even now, all the way in Nairobi, I sing in the choir at the cathedral down the street from me. So that's been kind of like a nice 360 back to the beginning.
Yeah, it's almost a continuation of, and yeah, I love that. It's
But,
a
I always was kind of open to other things too. I had a friend in middle school who was like really into like Wicca. So, like, we were learning about that way back then. And I bought my first tarot deck when I was like 14, I think,
wow,
in school, and I still have it actually.
right?
So it's always been kind of like a hodgepodge, right? I think God and spirit, appear to us in many forms. It's just whether or not you're willing and able and open to accept it and see it when it comes. So um yeah, it's always been one of those things where I'm like, if it's coming to you, then why not be open and ready? So
Yeah, I mean, I love that, but it's true. Well, and sometimes I feel that the gift of being queer is that you already aren't the norm, right? Like it's like, all right. So and already, it's kind of like Trevor Noah saying he was born a crime, like it's that same kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, I already don't fit. So and if you have something within you that definitely has connected to something, in an understanding and expansion of it, then you're going to have to find a way to make it work, right? If you're going to have any sort of, I'm always talking about expansion. I tell people growth is directional, and expansion is in every direction. So we're always looking for expansion. And in a spiritual life, it's really about taking care of that inner self, right? So you can't expand if you don't have any power from within.
yeah.
So you have to let go of the things that people are telling you that are wrong with you in order to be able to connect to that sense of self that allows you to expand, that love of that internal love, that you said, oh, that was, it's a journey, and there are a couple of times in there you're like, and that's why it's funny, because I work hard at encouraging people to not be afraid of the idea of having a spiritual life. A lot of people have been burned by religion, and it's interesting because every religion has people that are deeply mystic, right? And deeply, and speak in tongues and do all kind, I mean, and connect in sort of like deep ways that all really originate energetically from the same space, right? And then people put all these rules and things on top of things, and like, well, this means this. Well, not, I don't think so. I don't think that that's what that meant. This whole I'm pretty sure that there was a whole lot of lines in there that is just about love. So I don't know what you're reading. But so I feel as though this giving yourself the gift of a spiritual journey and being open to what I used to go to church with all of my friends. It didn't matter. My mom grew up Baptist. My dad grew up Catholic here in Louisiana, in New Orleans. And, but my dad left the church. I found out at one point my dad considered being a priest. I was like, really?
I almost went to divinity school.
That doesn't surprise me, actually. That doesn't actually surprise me, but my dad definitely surprised me. But I thought about, it still plays at the back of my mind about going to, I'm going through my spiritual practitioner licensing right now. So that's been years of study, and now we're in this cohort for 2 years of, we got accepted into the cohort, and now we have 2 years of preparing for this test, and we have to sit in front of a panel and all this stuff before we get licensed. So going through all of this, I'm like, I don't know if I want to like get a master's. Like I just don't know if I want to go more school, but I love school and I love learning. So it's still possible. I fought the idea of becoming Reverend Robyn for 20 plus years. I've been called that way multiple times, and I keep saying, no, that's not a thing. Absolutely no. And then someone said, I think you need to reevaluate what it means to minister to people, because I always made flippant comments about why I couldn't be a minister, and they were like, I think you need to think about that some more. And I was like, okay, stop saying things because you're making me feel away.
I think it's interesting because I feel like in all practices you have people that fall into kind of different categories, right? And I think there are some people within different types of organized religions for whom the rules and all that works really well,
Yeah.
and that's fine. Like if that works for you, then go with it, right? But I also think that there are a lot of people that are in like the more like quote unquote like esoteric like side of things who can do some of the same stuff, where it's like I keep all my knowledge in here and like I'm the gateway and like you have to go through me and like I'm not gonna like even when I do readings, like a lot of times like I'll have people who have been getting tarot readings done for like a long time, and I'm always very like, like let me explain what these cards mean, and like this is how I read it this way. And I've had people be like, I feel like I learned more, in this reading about how all of this works than I've gotten, dozens of readings in the past. And I'm like, it doesn't all have to live up here. If you
Right.
want to know about it, that's also fine. If you just want me to tell you this is what
Right.
happened, like, I mean, we could do that. But, you know, I feel like, you know, all of us should be able to have access to, how all of this works, right? Like, it shouldn't,
Right. Well,
like,
and somebody taught you, like you learned.
and then everyone's like, I don't really know what's happening, but I'm just drink the cup, like, you know?
Well, it's funny because it's important that people, you know, being it's because you're an educator. So I'm going to say it. It's because
I'm like, let me teach you about what's happening here. And people are like, I just want to know what's
yeah,
happening. And I'm like, well, I'm still gonna teach you about
right. Well, and it's important because here's my deal. I always say to Veronica, my husband or wife, if you don't understand what that means, but I always say to her, when you're training somebody, you have to not only train them how to do the thing, you have to train them why they're doing the thing, right? Because if you don't train them why they're doing the thing, they may shortcut it in a way that really they can't do it. And she works around really dangerous equipment that if you shortcut a thing, you could lose a limb or lose a life, right? So you don't want to shortcut the thing, and they're under time constraints, right? So sometimes people will do a thing that really there's a reason all of those steps are in there. There's a reason all of that's in there, right? Also, so if you're getting a reading and somebody's telling you this thing, I feel like if you're not explaining it, really explaining it, not just telling it, but explaining it, then that's an ego thing for the reader,
right.
right? Because they're like, oh, I am this mystical being and you have to come to me so I can do the thing.
I always tell people, I'm like, look, like it's not like in the movies where like, there's like the Zoltar speaks and you like put the like coin in and like the thing pops out and it's like bzz, like you're gonna die in 13 days. Like that's not how this works, right? Like, tarot especially is so much more about like, like these are the energies around you, like these are the challenges that you're having. Like here are suggestions about like how you can move past those. And like I mean, I always say that in a lot of ways, like a good tarot reading is very similar to like a good therapy session, right? Because it's like, here's what's going on, like here's what I'm struggling with, and it's like cool, like here are the messages about like how you can move past that. And if we do a few readings and you're not listening, then they're progressively going to get more like beat you over the head, but because you just don't want to listen, hard headed.
It's not going to not do that just because you don't want to hear that.
But I'm always like, it's not like some like mystical, like, here's like the architecture of your life. Like,
Right.
no, it really is more about figuring out just kind of you know, like another perspective, right? On like what you're struggling with and like how you can move forward. And
Well,
so,
I always say to people, everything is information, right?
mhm,
So it's just like, astrology or any other the mystical arts, right? Like any of them, they're all information. And
mhm,
and the whole point is how you use them. That's
yeah,
what the limitable living sessions are all about. It's like, let's talk about all these things. Let's talk about stones and crystals. Let's talk about tarot. Let's talk about astrology. Let's talk about all the things. Let's talk about, you know, the Bible. Let's talk about this book. Let's talk about that book. Let's talk, I talked last week was all about books. And I had the Bhagavad Gita, I had the Science of Mind, and I had the Holy Bible, all as books that I talked about. I had the Vortex, which is Esther Hicks and Abraham. It was like I had all the things, the secret and the mystic and the this and the that, like all the things, because it's like it's all there to help you discern what's right for your life.
yeah,
And the more you can learn and the more you can find teachers that can help you,
mhm,
then the the more spectacular it's going to be, because you're going to be expanding, you're just going to keep, it's just going to keep being better
yeah.
because someone is helping you understand how to make those decisions.
They're all just different. I mean, you know, life is multifaceted, right? Like people are multifaceted, and so why shouldn't and why would you expect that your spiritual existence would be anything less than multifaceted, right? Like it all falls under the same kind of framework to me.
Right. Well, the external world is a complete reflection of your internal world, for sure. So it's going to be and I am so many things, and and simply thinking about what's funny, interestingly enough, I've taken this huge spiritual arc in my life, gone in lots of directions, and ultimately I've come actually back very close to how I thought when I was young. When I was going to Sunday school, and the purity of my understanding of myself as a spiritual being, as, child of God, spiritual being, but, choose your language. That I didn't have any illusions or any guilt or any fear when
Yeah,
it came to who I was as a spiritual being. And I may not have had the language, right? I had very, 7, 8, 10-year-old language, but I knew what I knew, right? And I had no question. And then all of these questions come, right? You have questions of self and things, and then people hand you interesting questions that you then have to work your way through.
yeah, yeah. The doubt, the self doubt, especially doesn't come until later,
Right.
and
I
unfortunately,
want to be Pippi Longstocking all the time. He is my spirit animal, like Pippi Longstocking. She had a monkey, and she was a pirate. Come on, man! Like, what was she was magic? Okay,
yeah,
I'm like, that is me. Like I was like, if I were gonna be a white Scandinavian girl, like that was it. That would be Pippi Longstocking. But that was it. Like I didn't. She had all the power because she didn't. She knew she had all of the power. I kind of
yeah,
feel like that's the reality of it, right?
yeah. It is interesting how you kind of, yeah, it's like you come full circle in order to actually advance.
Yes. Well, yes. And and you have to do the whole trip, right? You like it's like you're born knowing everything, and then you slowly forget it, only to have to relearn it to realize that you knew it all along.
Well, that was the thing that was so interesting about like even starting this as like a business, right? Was like, you know, I had been talking about it with a friend for like months, you know, she was like, "You're really good at this. Like, you give really good readings. You're always like so like firm but gentle, and you like really like tell it like it is." And you know, she was like, "You need to like start the business." And we've been talking about it for months. And I was like, nobody's gonna want to like hire me. Like who? Like you know, like the doubt was what stood in the way, right? And then you know, one week she was over, and you know, I was doing readings for her and a friend, and you know, they posted about it on their Instagram story, and by the end of the day, there were like 3 people that were like, "Who did this?" Because like I need a reading, and you know, I was like, "Well, I guess it's time to suck it up and make the page," and I did, and then like it's just kind of taken off from there. So
Hey,
you know, but yeah, I mean, it really is like, yeah, and like I said, it's funny because I bought my first tarot deck when I was like 14, so it's like I really came back to stuff that
but
has
I love
kind of,
that.
you
You're
know,
singing even song, right? So you're staying in that, that beautiful musical, spiritual connection that you've always had. And then now you've got Fikira Kenya that you start. Now, I want you to tell me the origin of this name. I mean, Kenya is really easy, but what does Fikira mean? Is it have an actual name, or is it just something you made up?
yeah. So Fikira means thought in Swahili, uh,
Okay.
and so this was something that we really kind of toyed with, because you know, I had all these like ideas about like what I wanted to call the thing because I was like, we could call it Kenya Conjure or something like that, you know, because like I do some other spiritual stuff as well on the side. But you know, the thing about the Kenyan context is that you know, even now, like you know, I get people that will message me and they're like, you know, is tarot reading like a spiritual act or like, you know, is this demonic? Like, you know,
Right.
I
Well,
do this, I'm Christian. And, you know, I always tell people like, you know, I keep my holy water, I keep my like crucifix, like, you know, I use those things when I do readings, right?
right.
And and so we had to come up with a way to open the door, you know, for people that wasn't going to be scary, right? Or wasn't going to push people away. And so, you know, Fikira meaning thought in Swahili, like both, of course, being the language that is the lingua franca of the country, but also, you know, picking something that really reflects the fact that, you know, all spiritual work, but especially, you know, the work of tarot has to do much more with the mind and you know your thoughts and all of the kind of internal world than it does with anything like you know like it's not like I'm over here like doing chants and you know
Well,
casting.
right. I mean, well, and people kind of think everything is voodoo, right? Like they think anything, and
Which
and I'm not saying
voodoo
anything
also
about
is
voodoo.
not like that scary. It's
Yeah,
like
no,
you know
I'm not saying
you
anything
can
about
thank
voodoo, but
sci-fi and like you know the skeleton key for making everyone think that it's like you know I'm gonna
well,
like crawl up the wall and like come across the ceiling or
yeah,
something.
that's what I'm saying. It's like they think it's like it's Hollywood has done some interesting numbers on things that were not Christian based spiritual paths, right? And so it's really I one of the things I talk about in my book is because it's about stones and crystals, and people are all like, oh, that's all that hippie shit, or that's like super woo or blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, do you need the actual quotes from the Bible where they talk about the stones and they talk about the chest plate of what is it, the chest plate of, I can't remember, where it's the chest plate that the priest, the rabbis have to wear in order to be able to talk to God, and it's got specific stones in it. And then
There's stuff in there about like who is it, Samson, and like she cut the hair, and then like he lost his power. I mean, you know, there's tons of mystical stuff that happens.
exactly. And then there are the walls of the city,
Yeah, like we're gonna march around the city this many times and say these words, and like the walls are gonna tumble down. Like this is all You know, it might as well be voodoo.
Right. Well, and what's interesting is, what informed me a lot about the history of when the Bible was a living oral document, right? Was the book The Red Tent. I don't know if you've ever read it. It's a total chick book because it's about the red tent, like if you don't know anything about Bedouins and, and there's like a whole tent where women go for a certain time of the month and they take care of stuff and they're away from the people. Right. And however, what it was this, understanding of what that place really was, right? Like it was a women's space. It was a space for women to teach each other about the things that women took care of, birthing children, the keeping all of their spiritual objects and and keeping up the things and gathering the things to be able to do offerings. And but like there was all of this stuff that the women were responsible for, and in that sacred space, right? And it was really great. And also it helped me realize, historically speaking, all of the stuff that they're referencing. It's like, this is why I could spend who knows how long just studying, like being a Bible scholar, right? Like there's all of this, like, but what about this? And what about this? And you cut out all the women and blah, 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 like there's all these things.
No, I mean, I remember when I was in, high school, in AP Lit, we used a book that was like the reference book was the Bible as literature.
Yes.
It was all about, examining the Bible as a literary work beyond just like a spiritual text. And yeah, it was, I mean, like, I remember like the levels of understanding and nuance that I got from that versus like, the standard text that we would read throughout the year
Right.
as part of the liturgy were like two completely different. It's like a whole other level of like, here's all of the things, right?
Right.
Or like I remember in college I took it was like a philosophy, literary philosophy course. And we like looked at
Right on. That sounds awesome.
We looked at like the first part of Genesis. We looked at that alongside like Beowulf and like a few other texts.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember and it's like, this like kooky old philosophy professor who was like, he's like, I don't go to church. And I was like, okay. We're reading about the whole thing with Apple and like, how like, Adam lied like the first time that God called it, like, and all this stuff, right? But like, it was
I like this guy.
Well, but it was like the level of like analysis of like, okay, like in this part, like God was pissed because like he was jealous. Like it says it right here. And I was like, we never talk about this stuff at church. This is way more interesting.
How is this the same book? Like, I don't even understand how we're even talking about the same book. I've been going to church for a while.
Right. I'm like, what do you mean God is jealous? Like he was
like, well, and what's interesting is what it does is helps you like expansion, right? Like every time somebody challenges some thought that you had or some understanding that you had come to, all of a sudden everything, so much more is available to you. It's
like the nuanced understanding actually deepens your ability to relate, right?
Yes.
It unlocks layers of meaning that you don't have access to when you just have like this very basic like textual like a literal understanding, right?
Well, yes, and that's kind of where you start, right? Like with learn Bible verses, when you do stuff in school, when you're in Bible study and Sunday school and all of that kind of stuff, the stuff is really basic, right? And it's like, do this, don't do this. God's going to get you if you don't do the thing that you're supposed to do, which is interesting because I was never good at the God's going to get you part, because I was too busy believing that God always loved me. Like, I was too busy with the, God doesn't make junk. There's not God made you. God loves you. God wants you to be happy. Like, that was the first stuff I learned. So like when they started trying to hand me all the guilt and you're a terrible, like all the other stuff, I wasn't really good at picking that up. I was like, I don't know, because I thought you said God loved me and like that God made me. So how could there be something wrong with me if God made me? If I'm of God and if all things are of God, then how could there be something wrong with me now? Because you already told me there's all good things are of God. So like you're already mixing things up already. And so I just said, I'm not going to believe that stuff.
I mean, I specifically remember the day that I got kicked out of Bible study class when I was like 7.
Ooh, tell me this story. I love this. I love this kind of stuff.
We were studying, the verse, like, I am the way, the truth, and the life. There's no way to the Father but through me.
Through me, yes.
And, I remember I was just like, I just read, in the way that like a 7-year-old, especially a 7-year-old like me, who was like reading like Stephen King novels that was far too verbose early night. I was like, Miss, I mean, but I was like, so you're telling me, and I like right there, she should have known to just stop.
You should have known to shut that down if you don't want to get upset.
That like, I was like, so for instance, like Gandhi is burning in hell right now because he never professed Jesus as the Lord and Savior. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense.
Oh, that's just silly. That's just silly. That's just.
I was like, I just like, I really can't get behind that one. She was like,
you gotta go. Fall in line. It's like Pleasantville, right?
Yeah.
You were like Reese Witherspoon in Pleasantville saying, what's at the end of Main Street? When you get to the end of Main Street, where does it go? Right back to the beginning. Like we're just here.
I can't fault her because I'm sure like in whatever training she went through to
there's no they're not training
nobody ever taught her how to respond to questions like that. So like I can't fault her, but
no,
but college that like when I actually had like the woman who was the chaplain, of course it was a woman, who was a chaplain, at my college, who was very much more into like the intellectual and like philosophical part of Christianity. Like she was the first, I think spiritual leader that I dealt with inside of the Episcopal Church that was really like, no, like, ask the tough questions. Like, let's hash it out. Like, let's talk about based on like levels of philosophy and like what the church believes and what the priest like, let's put all these pieces together and actually have like a nuanced discussion about what this means. And that's the kind of stuff that, at least for me, like draws me in, right? Like I said, some people, they're cool with like, this is like what the thing says and I'm going to do the thing. And like, that's great. Like, I'm happy for people like that.
Right.
I'm just not. I've just never done that.
Well, and I always said that if I actually were going to go to like divinity school or whatever, I literally it would really be to be a theologian. Right? It literally would be, it wouldn't be to be exactly. It wouldn't be, of course, though, what I'm getting my license in is pastoral care. But
no. But the two go hand in hand, right? Like I think people who are purely theologians, like, and don't know how to contextualize like their philosophizing into like practical everyday life.
Right.
Like I think that's a challenge. And I think people that are all pastoral with none of the like theological background, like that's also a challenge. Like I think you need both to really be able to kind of like walk in both worlds, right?
Well, thank you for that, because I think that well, because it's true. It's true, because for me at least, because that's really what I do. As a spiritual life coach, my whole responsibility is to help people understand how to have a spiritual life every day. Like, this is a daily experience. The reason it's called spiritual practice is because you have to do it all the time. Like, there's no like, and I'm spiritual, and then that's the end. Like, it doesn't happen. So we have to do the things all the time, and we have to learn what that means for us.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk a little bit about your cards that you're using now. So, like you said, that because you've got some different new cards that you're using, right? That I was super interested in, that I had not seen before. I have a lot of cards. I have oracle cards and wisdom cards and tarot cards, which we're going to do a whole class on what the difference is between all the cards, like, because there's an actual formula to actually have a tarot deck. Like, there's a specific number of cards that have to be because it's all based originally on playing cards and the and the gypsies. But I knew someone whose grandmother could read tarot with a deck of cards, like legit. It was legit. But so tell me about this deck that you have.
Which one? I mean, there's so many.
Well, tell me about your newest deck. So it seems like you got like a new deck since you've been there that was more indigenous.
You want to talk about the African tarot?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is a really cool, I mean, it's like a beautiful deck. It's actually, the visuals are all designed by a Nairobi-based artist.
Okay, right on.
And so it was one of those, it's so funny, like, I followed her already because I had bought some, some artwork from her. So it's like on the wall in my house. And she posted one day, she's like, "Oh, I like this tarot deck that I designed." And I was like, "What? Like, I'm ordering it right now." And so I literally ordered it like right that second. And she was like, "Oh, I thought you were like just saying that." And I was like, "No, I need it."
Like, real.
So I mean, the visuals are just really. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, it's hard. I know. Oh, look, there's like things, like it's got like an iridescence and things. Oh my goodness.
They're all just like really beautiful.
Yes, it's art. There you go. That's a good shot. See, that's what I have, a Rumi oracle deck that's all art. So like, that's legit when it's actual art pieces. Let me see some more.
I thought that it, like, what was exciting about it to me is like, like so many things, right? It's like the tarot deck, like the classic one, which I also use, I have my old school.
Dude, really nice. That's a good one. Yeah.
But the thing is, like, so often, if you're somebody who is African, or like, if that is your life context, it's like you're searching to like kind of place yourself within the context of this work, right? And so what I love about this is it's like, rather than you trying to find yourself in the cards, like, it's right there.
I love that. Well, I love that. Ooh, yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great, I mean, it's a beautiful deck. Like, I love to read with it. I also, I've spoken to the girl who designed it, and I was like, what I really like about it is that, again, with that whole idea of like accessibility, right? Like, a lot of the illustrations that she's created are much more, not like literal, but like the representation of what the card means is, it just makes a lot more sense based on like what you see on the card. Because a lot of times I feel like, especially with the classic deck, it's like you're trying to explain to somebody like, this is what this card means, and it's like,
they're like, that doesn't look like that at all.
To see on this card, right? I'm trying to find a good example out of the ones I have here, but like, it's just, I mean, yeah, half the time it's like you're doing the reading and it's like, what is, so like, for instance, like here, the Four of Cups,
Yes.
which
Okay.
generally like to be like, it's like be grateful for what you have, right? And so you can see in the picture, he's receiving a cup, from this hand that's coming from the cloud.
Yes.
And so it's this idea of like, you can even see in the illustration, it's like be thankful for like the blessings that you've received. And that's what you see in the card, right? So that was one of the things I told her. I was like, I appreciate that things like that make how we make meaning of the cards just more accessible, right?
Well, and what's interesting is because it's you could go really literal, right? When you're doing a design on the deck, it could literally just be 9 cups and not, and it doesn't have to be all of that extra. So it's when an artist takes the time to both understand the deck and what those cards, the actual meanings of those cards, and then represent that as art, and then give that as an accessible point for peoples that would not necessarily have seen themselves represented in a deck previously. It's this kind of beautiful equation of how you can like, oh, what, well, I could see A, the way you read, and then B, if you're using those cards, it would just be a whole other situation by the time you got to the end of it, where you're
Yeah.
just, what just happened? But I'm like all about that. Like, every time I've had someone read remotely for years, because one of my old my person that previously used to read my cards all the time, she and I ended up living thousands of miles apart, and so she
Yeah,
still had.
I'm not coming all the way there just to get a reading. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, sometimes I'll get on a plane for things. However, I can't. Sometimes I need the reading now, and I haven't been able to rearrange all of my stuff. So the idea of, I really need a reading now, and how can I get a reading when you're not in, when you're in Africa? You are on the African continent and I am not. Okay. Like,
Yeah.
not, let's not even talk about country. Like, we're not going to talk about like countries. We're in 2 different continents, right? So like, if someone wanted reading from you, and they don't have to be around the corner from you. Like, so how would that happen? Like, if I'm like, okay, Brendan, it's time, I really want this reading now, what are we doing?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that I've had a lot of. I've done readings recently for like the full range of people, to like complete skeptics, to like people that are like, I've been doing this forever, right? And I get a lot of questions about that, because people are like, well, how are you gonna like know that it's like for me, and like all of that? And I always tell people that tarot reading is kind of like a mixture of like both stuff that you learn, right? Because you have to like learn what all these cards mean and stuff, and like also on top of that, just there is like a bit of it that you're lucky to be born with, or to have like a
Yes. Well,
bit
you do have to kind of be tuned in
yeah.
in a specific way.
And what I found is that even remotely, right? Like let's say you reach out and you're like, hey, I want to read it. Like, I'll always ask some questions so that I can contextualize like what comes through, because of course, like, I mean, I can do it without it, because like I had a girl a couple of weeks ago who, she was like, I really just like, I think this is all made up, right? And so it's like, I'm asking her question. She's like, I want to know more about like my career, and I'm like trying to like drag like info out of her, and she like didn't want to tell me anything. So I like basically did a blind reading, and
Right.
she still was like, oh wow, like, a lot of this is so accurate. And I was like, I know. So I'll ask some questions, right? So if it's like, I want a career reading, right? I'll just, I'll say, well, give me a little bit more context, right? Like, what kind of work do you do? Are there any questions that you have in your mind? Like, what is like your motivation, right? Because usually when somebody is moved to be like, I want a reading, you know, it's not usually like you're just doing like a dipstick like on the engine to see
Right.
like you actually like find
You're
out.
court low. Yeah. Right.
And so, you know, I'll usually, you know, we'll have a little bit of conversation just so I can understand more about like what challenges you might be facing or like what things you might be wondering about. And then you know, I basically sit and think, you know, I have my little setup, you know, I light my candles and I get my little crystals out and I have my little crucifix and my rose petals and feathers and stuff. And you know, I just sit and shuffle the cards, right? And I put the question into it, and then I pull and I do the spread, and then I interpret it, right? And so what I usually will do for the remote readings is, you know, my kind of standard is like I'll just record it and I'll send it to you, just because that allows me to, you know, do it when my energy is right and the space is right, and all, because otherwise you have to deal with trying to find time like you and I right now to like get on Zoom.
Right. 8 hours apart and doing it.
But you know, so what I'll typically do is I'll make a video recording where I actually like walk it. That's where the teacher comes in, right? Because I'm like, this card means this, and this card means this, and you know, swords mean like thoughts, and cups mean emotion. And so,
Emotions.
you know, so usually, you know, for like a basic spread, you know, it'll be a video that's like anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes long, where I actually like take you through step by step, and then I'll also send a picture of the spread with like a text summary, like a paragraph of kind of like the high level big thing.
Okay, right on.
It's all through WhatsApp because you know that's how we function. Yeah, is through WhatsApp. But yeah, it's. I mean, I've been like I said, like you know, the doubt was there, right? Especially like the first week or two when I was doing readings, and I'm like, you know, I'm gonna send it. They're gonna be like, none of this is true. And, you know, it's. I mean, it's funny. Like I actually, you know, I did some work for somebody who I see like for other types of services, and she was like, you're gonna get to see like all of like the, you know, my interior like anxiety, and I was like, that's everyone who's like a healer, right? Like we all have our stuff that we're still working.
Yes. Well, and it's big part a good portion of that, where that comes from, I believe, is because of our integrity, right? We want to be good at it. Someone who doesn't have any integrity wouldn't give a shit about how someone feels about it and whether they're going to think
Cards, and I'm gonna give you this thing, and if it's accurate, it's accurate. If it's not,
like whatever, and give me my $50. But that's not like, so that's not the like someone with integrity that's really in it to be in service, that really wants people to get from it what they know they could get from it if you are on your shit, right? Like if you're really on it, then they ought to be able to get lots of information and lots of help and inspiration for their journey from it. So that's when where that imposter syndrome kind of pops up like that, right? Is that ooh, I don't know, maybe I should be, you know, should I grow dreads? Should I do a thing? You know what I mean? Like, are people gonna know? No. But you know, yeah, no, you absolutely
I will,
no.
never, I will never be the white man with dreads.
Thank you, but I so yeah, so it's like it. There's that thing though where you like, how are people going to accept this? I had a hard time with it a lot because my background was always business, you know, like I've always spent so much time making sure that people understood I was professional, right? You know, I'm this kind of woo kind of person. So like I had to be really close at, you know, making sure people understood that I was a professional. So I was a business consultant, right? You know, I have a degree in business. So my whole deal is this is this and blah, blah, blah. And then I spent all my time with my clients, helping them with their personal lives. Like I would get these business consultant clients, and then I would spend all of my time with, well, are you journaling? How about this? Maybe you need to journal around this. And I would say, and help. And even the actual business stuff that I talked to them about was always based on their spiritual like understanding of things, because they were all entrepreneurs, right? I wasn't dealing corporately,
Right.
That's completely different. That's not my language. Right. And it's like, well, when's the last time you took a vacation? That's not a thing. And I'm like, what was the point of starting your own business if you can't take a vacation? Like, what are you doing?
I can't help you with the business stuff if like all this other shit is hanging over you, because what am I supposed to do? Like, that's like trying to build a house on quicksand, right? Like, it's just gonna fall down.
Well, yeah, because guess what? The minute you get sick, your business is in the toilet, because and you are going to get sick. This is not me predicting things. This is not me projecting anything
I'm an
on you.
oracle, and I don't have to be an oracle to tell you that someday, someplace, you're
going to not be able to get out of the bed. It's just going to happen. You're going to look up and go, I can't get up. Yeah. And then there's going to be no one that knows any of the things, that can do any of the things that your business cannot operate. Yeah, that's not going to work. So anyway, so when I realized that I spent so much time doing that, and had a hypnotist in a bathroom tell me one time, because why not? Because there I was. She was like,
it's very on brand.
Yeah, you're right. She was like, you need to, do you tell? She's like, you're really intuitive. Like there's a thing going on right here. And I was like, yeah. She's like, do you tell your clients any of that stuff? And I was like, no. She goes, you can't be afraid to tell your clients that you are this person, because they're going to accept you as that person as long as you are honest with yourself about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's legit. I mean, it took me I don't know how much longer to actually do the things, right? However,
just because you know doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to do it in like a proper timeline.
Well, it's the equation that I always give my clients. Vision plus thought plus action equals manifestation, right? So you can have the vision, but if you're taking action without thinking about it, you're just kind of throwing spaghetti against the wall, right? Mm-hmm. And you have the vision, and you've really thought about all the ways that you can make that vision come true without taking any action.
That's just an idea.
You're the one sitting watching Shark Tank going, I invented that thing 3 years ago, like 10 years ago. It's like, but you didn't do it, so
it's sitting on your phone.
And there you are. So okay, so I want to, before we tell people how to find you and how to get one of these magical readings from you, I want to tell you what stone I chose for you today.
I'm excited.
So you are Sagittarian, and your stone that I chose for you is chalcedony. Or if you don't speak the King's English, you might say the word chalcedony, because that would be how it is often also pronounced. So chalcedony is a stone for receiving thought transmissions. It enhances receptivity, balancing body, mind, emotion, and spiritual energy. So that's the super short version of that I'm reading today from Love is in the Earth, which is clearly well used by me, and a bit of a tome. Like, all the words are really small, and there's not any pictures in this one. There's one I use that's got pictures, but this one's doesn't. But it is also, it's of the quartz family, so technically this would be considered a crystal versus a stone. But one of the things that I loved was it encourages brotherhood amongst all. It symbolizes benevolence and goodwill. And the benevolence itself is the nurturing energy that comes from the stone. So it helps you feel aligned and balanced in a way that you can really receive those messages from higher self in a way that doesn't, so ego doesn't come in, right? Like when something is, but when you are having a feeling of benevolence, but in that context of brotherhood, that's that we are in this together, and I'm going to bring what I have, and this stone being one that is a balance of body, mind, spirit, and emotions, right? Then that means I'm bringing my best, most expanded self to this. So the benevolence isn't like that. I'm always like not a big fan of the word benevolence because it ends up becoming this like benefactor, like I'm giving you the lowly somebody something, like it, so it
has an interesting like connotation.
Yeah, so you have to come at it from the intention of it, right? Yeah. And the real intention of it is I have good that I am trying to share with others.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
what we've been talking about, right? With the whole purpose of doing spiritual work.
So maybe I got
I see how you brought that back. I see how you brought it around.
So see, you do card reading and I go, you know what stone you need? And then it comes all together. But oh yes. So that is your stone. That is the stone that I've chosen for you. And I think that if you do not have it, then that is probably one that you might want to go out and get. And so now, last but not least, how can someone connect with you? How, if they're like, this sounds really amazing, and now I really want one of these readings, what do they have to do?
So the easiest way to find us is on Instagram at Fikira Kenya, all one word.
Okay.
I have a Twitter page, but it's like a sad state of affairs. So
don't do Twitter. I'm this close to getting to just stop using Twitter altogether. But I love words so much that I can't. Yeah. I think I love it. Do you have like pictures of like spreads, or do you have pictures of like cards? Tell me about your Instagram page just a little, and then
we do like a weekly card pull, like a card for the week. So we post that. I say we, but it's me. Right. But yeah, and I post different stuff, right? Like sometimes I'll see something and I'm gonna post a story about it. I like to ask questions to like followers about their own spiritual practices and what they're doing. And I have some folks that follow me and like we have whole conversations about all kinds of stuff, via direct messages. So I just I think it's an interesting. I think it's interesting, of course, because I make it, but I try to make it interesting for other people. But it's all about just trying to make some of the stuff, like I was saying, a little bit more accessible, right? So like I like to post content that's educational, and then we also do like a monthly drawing for someone to get a free reading. So
what?
Make sure people to follow.
Oh, this is your way. Get in there, and I just won a contest for a stone the other day.
Really?
So those Instagram contests really work.
Yeah.
Do it. People do win the things. When I do contests, people really actually win the things. I'm actually about to do a contest for a box with stones and cards and all kinds of good stuff in it. So I love it. Right on. So get that, get on it, get with it, I'm telling you guys right now, get to Instagram and start following Fikira Kenya. You know you want to. I just, if for no other reason, just that weekly card, right? Like if you're gonna just start easy peasy, like not gonna dive all the way in, you're gonna dip your toe in the pool. Follow just so you can see that weekly card and say, maybe this might have something for me. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful, and I got to see you and talk to you because I never get to do that. So that makes me really happy. And I'm going to say thank you to you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for hanging out with us. What always happens when I have a friend with me, it's always an hour. It's always because there's so much rich goodness in there. So I'm glad that you hung out with us and that you spent this time and you had some conversation with us. And I know that you don't want to miss another one of these kind of great conversations. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure that you click that subscribe button so that you can get messages about every time that we're going live or every time some new video has popped up. And join me on another episode next week. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am grateful. And remember, my friends, you are illimitable. Illimitable. So that means you can go out and create a life that rocks. Bye.